This is a quick lecture about the art of storytelling through podcasting and why storytelling is so critical and important to the podcast medium. We want to explore this art of storytelling. It's not just about recording audio. It's about understanding how the podcast has transformed American auditory storytelling, in particular African American auditory storytelling, and the practices of meaningful storytelling across all genres. Podcast is not just a medium built on intimacy and voice, but it is uniquely placed to carry stories that resonate culturally, socially, and personally. Podcasting as contemporary storytelling is where I kind of want to begin here. It combines journalism, documentary, audio making, and performance. Unlike scripted TV or film, podcasting relies on sound, pacing, and narrative structure rather than visuals or creating worlds purely from live audio. Listeners are, in fact, the co-creators. They use their minds, their imagination, to participate and fill in the pictures in their own minds that they don't see with their eyes. This medium also fosters a host-listener bond rooted in informality and immediacy, a trend scholars see as defining modern podcast narratives. That means they can be conversational and emotionally rich rather than strictly linear, a departure from classic radio norms towards the personal audio narrative. In this space, this is why I believe that writing for the ear makes you the best possible writer. You can work in what we call the theater of the mind, where you can get people to understand what it is that you're saying because the words are so well put together that it paints a picture that takes people to a different place. It's almost like being able to have someone read a book and imagine themselves in another world. Why does the structure matter in narrative podcasting? Even conversational podcasts benefit from a clear narrative structure. Think of this as a story architecture. You have a hook or a cold open. You want to grab the listener's attention in the first 30 to 60 seconds. Introduce a striking fact, soundbite, or question. Then you have the development or rising action. You'll begin to build tension, curiosity, and emotional investment. You'll layer your content. You'll be adding interviews, narration, maybe clips from other people, so listeners feel compelled to continue to listen. Then you have your climax in the insight. This is where you pay off. This is the moment of discovery, revelation, or the emotional peak. You want to have resolution. This is where you leave listeners with closure or a compelling thought for what comes next. So this storyline is legend across all storytelling platforms. You have an introduction, boy meets girl. Then you have the build-up. Boy begins to call girl, shows interest in girl, shows his desire to spend time with the girl. And that's kind of the second step here. That is the development, the rising action. Then you have the climax, the payoff. Boy finally gets through and gets on one knee and proposes to girl. And then the resolution, she says yes, they live happily ever after. I want you to remember that you're writing for the ear, not for the page. Script writing for podcasts demands a conversational tone. The sentences should be short, and they should also sound and feel natural. And then you have some signposting, or mile markers, if you will, which kind of gives you the opportunity to say, okay, then this happened. And after that, then we did this. And that kind of helps listeners follow the story platform, the story idea. Then you want to edit your story for clarity. You want to make certain that whatever you have written, again, does well as it's spoken. The two things are different. For instance, we often speak with words like can't and won't, don't. But we often write with language like cannot, will not, do not. So make certain that you are speaking a language that feels comfortable to the listener. Think of each line as something your audience will hear, not read. Cafe-style language, rhetorical pauses, and intentional cadence will make your story more engaging. I like to use the idea of building excitement or building drama by changing the pacing and the inflection in my tone. For instance, I just got a little bit excited when a person showed up that I hadn't seen in years. My voice and the tone and the pace all changed. On the other hand, the other day, I received a text message from a friend of mine at a weird time. It was 6 a.m. and I never expect my phone to ring or buzz or make any noises at that time of the day. And in fact, I don't speak with this person often. And so to get a message from them at 6 a.m. was a little bit of a shock. The message said, hey, this is Herb's mother, in fact. Wow, it came from Herb, or at least Herb's phone. And she said something really bad had happened to Herb. And so those two differences lets me sound real, sound like I'm taking you with me and I'm telling you a personal story. We sound like trusted friends. We don't want to sound like a textbook. Great podcasts are built on great stories, even if they're real or imagined stories. So they can be fiction or nonfiction. Each character in the story or voice in the story has to be represented. This could be you, the host, or a guest, or even the community you represent. You want to detail the motivations and emotional stakes that make the narrative resonate. You want to have the conflict or tension that is necessary. It doesn't always have to be dramatic. It might be a question that drives the episode or problem your show investigates. Tension keeps the people tuned in. You want to have relatable elements. Listeners connect when they see themselves or when they recognize your narrative. Real people and authentic moments make podcasting powerful. Your voice is not the only instrument, but it does allow for you to use sounds to help shape narrative. Sounds like music that will help set the mood, ambiance that really help kind of drive things home powerfully. Then you have soundscapes and effects. You can have ambient noise like street sounds, doors closing, an ambulance, a crowd murmuring or cheering. It enhances the story. It tells people where the story is set and what is happening. You can have silence to help build anticipation and emphasize reflection, give listeners an emotional space. A lot of times you just have to stop and let the story land. And give it the space to breathe. And then use the sounds of either music or ambiance to help deliver other parts that don't have to be said. Podcasting is audio cinema. Sound choices matter as much as words. There's an authenticity and an ethical responsibility that you have in storytelling. In this class, you're not just crafting episodes, you're shaping narratives about real people and histories. that does carry a great deal of responsibility. You should be authentic. Your voice and your perspective matters. Honesty builds trust with your audience. Respect the subjects. Whether interviewing community members or presenting histories, fair representation is key. Reflect culture and context. Understand the traditions of auditory storytelling. From those oral traditions, particularly in our African American communities, to modern podcasts, and you need to position your work within these legacies. So, in conclusion, if you want to get a great grade here, I want you to take the theory and the practice and merge them together. Study narrative podcasts widely. One of my favorite ones is This American Life. I've added a clip of This American Life in the module so that you can listen to it. Practice scripting and recording and editing with purpose. Now, I want you to create a 5 to 7 minute narrative podcast episode that tells a clear, compelling story using audio storytelling techniques discussed in this lecture. It could be about yourself, your high school, your college experience, your community, your family, or some cultural or social issue. Make a mini documentary. If you want to tell me about, your life before Norfolk State University, how through high school you played football or you were a cheerleader, how you feel seen or feel invisible in the lives of others, how the candy lady was like the house where everybody just enjoyed going and hanging out around, or there was an arcade. Whatever it may be, tell your story. And 5 minutes of your story should be cool. We'll turn that in and you'll get a grade. Here are the things that you should do. 1, have a clear story, a central question. 2, have a strong hook in the first 30 to 60 seconds. 3, identify at least one particular character or voice that should be highlighted. That could be your own. It could be the story of another person. 4, have narrative structure, a beginning, middle, and end. And 5, if at all possible, I need you to use some sound design. That could be adding music, natural sound, etc. And most importantly, 6, ethical storytelling practices. If you're telling the story of someone else and there are personal pieces that are involved, then you should do one of 2 things: gain their consent or use false names to kind of protect someone's privacy. Be fair. If you present one side, present the other side, and then be accurate. All right? Check back in. There'll be more information about this particular assignment. It's going to be available in the module.